Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So good morning, Chairman Benedetto and members of the Assembly Standing Committee on Education and all other Assembly members that are present or will be present during this hearing. I want to thank you for holding this hearing today on a topic that I know is a difficult, complicated, but absolutely critical topic for discussion: the admissions process for New York City specialized high schools. With me is Josh Wallach, who is Deputy Chancellor of Early Education and Student Enrollment, and LaShawn Robinson, Deputy Chancellor of School Climate and Wellness in the Department of Education. So before I go further, I want to make one thing very clear this morning. In my role as Chancellor, my job is to ensure that all of our students are receiving a high-quality education that will prepare them for the future. I am happy to take the time to meet with any of you to explain in detail our comprehensive equity and excellence for all agenda, through which we are making strategic investments at key points of our children's educational careers. For example, our investments in pre-K for all, 3K for all, and universal literacy give our students the foundational skills they need to move on to content learning by 3rd grade. Our investment in middle school algebra ensures that our students will enter high school prepared to take higher level math and science courses, and many of you have taken the time to hear me describe this work in various community meetings, whether in one-to-one meetings, during school visits, or at other meetings, as I've mentioned. And I know you appreciate the comprehensive approach that we are taking to making sure that all of our students are on the right track. But that's not what this hearing is about today. This hearing about the admissions process for 8 of our schools known in state law as specialized high schools. I intend to use my time today to discuss my position on a fairer admissions process to these schools that will increase access for students we know can succeed there. As you know, having not been born in New York, in order to understand how we got to where we are today, I had to conduct research into New York City and state history. Here's what I found. In 1971, 48 years ago, romantic lighting, please.
Yes, somebody may have just gotten the chair. I'm not sure.
So, Mr. Chair, here's what I discovered. In 1971, 48 years ago, then Chancellor Harvey Scribner, in response to concerns that the admissions process to specialized high schools restricted access to Black and at that time Puerto Rican students, determined that he would convene a committee to consider the process of admissions. He never really got the chance. You see, the mere suggestion set off a panic that led to state legislative action, resulting in the 1971 law known as the Hecht-Calandra Act, a piece of legislation that set off heated debate and outcry in the legislature, particularly from Black and Puerto Rican elected officials. The record is clear. As a result, New York City is the only city in the nation that uses and is required to use, as a matter of state law, a single exam for admissions to selective schools. These are indisputable facts recorded in history. We cannot ignore the historical context that brought us to this place in the same way we cannot ignore the results. As I sit here with you today, exactly 1 week shy of the 65th anniversary of Brown versus the Board of Education, I must remind us that only 4% of this spring's specialized high school offers went to Black students, and only 7% went to Latino students. This happened despite extensive efforts and resources towards test prep and test awareness among students and families, despite an increase in those participating in test prep and in those taking the test, and despite a backdrop of constantly improving student and school performance, including middle school performance across the city. This legislation does what it was intended to do. Our proposal is simply this. Last year, the Department of Education proposed another method of admitting qualified students into these schools. And with the cooperation of Assemblyman Barron, this other method has been introduced as legislation. Under our proposal, the specialized high schools would admit the top 7% of students in each middle school based on a ranking determined by their grades and state test scores. We believe this method is fair, clear, objective, and does not put additional burdens on students and families in order to be admitted into these schools. It is based on a system that works. Over 20 years ago, the University of Texas, successfully implemented a similar top performers admissions method. When we developed our plan, we took into consideration the research of various testing and education experts, which finds that the use of multiple measures is a much better way of identifying student potential than a single high-stakes test. In fact, I've now worked in 5 cities and 5 states across the country, and I would be hard-pressed to find any education expert in any one of them who'd endorse making decisions about a child's future based on one single high-stakes test alone. We also were careful to design a system that would admit high-performing students who have the same or greater academic potential to those who get into these specialized schools now. The students who would be admitted under our plan have very similar GPAs and test scores to those who are currently admitted. We strive to strike a balance between testing as a measure and using strong non-test measurement, while still not introducing too much subjectivity or additional barriers into the process. Now, while we believe our proposal is the fairest, most equitable approach, we have made it clear that we are willing to hear other ideas. Since we announced our proposal almost a year ago, the Department of Education has gone to every single community education council. We've presented, we've taken feedback, and I and various members of my team have had numerous conversations with parents, advocacy groups, elected officials, and many others, where we have gotten thoughtful and useful feedback. I am willing and eager to discuss any ideas that you may have about how to make this system fairer for our students and families, but with one caveat. We cannot keep kicking this can down the road. For almost half a century, and in the month that we celebrate the 65th anniversary of the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision, we have allowed the current system to persist. You and I may not have been there when this law was put into place, but we are here now. And we cannot walk away and let a broken status quo continue for another 50 years. So I want to thank you for your time and the opportunity to testify here today. I look forward to answering your questions.